Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to continue unpacking this very dynamic week from Mars in the sign of Libra, making all kinds of aspects in a short period of time by looking specifically at the Mars opposite Saturn dynamic, which is arguably the biggest dynamic in the sky. Astrologers have been talking about aspects from Mars to Saturn for thousands of years, so we have a lot of really good historical data on this aspect in particular, which I think will help us to focus on a little bit before then putting Neptune into the mix and looking at the opposition to the two of them conjoined. So that's what we're going to do today. I have something I've been playing with a lot of new ways of creating content. So today, I'm going to give you 5 things to watch for, but I'm going to give you 5 things to watch for given Mars opposite Saturn in the 4 angular places of life: love and relationships, a kind of 7th house way of looking at an aspect; internal psychological, perhaps more of a 1st house kind of way of looking at things; career or work; and family dynamics. I'll tell you more about why I'm doing this as we go today, but it's just right on track with some of the innovations I've been playing with in my content creation since Uranus entered Gemini, which I've been having a lot of fun with. I hope you'll enjoy this. Basically, it's giving you a list of 20 things to watch for, 5 in 4 different areas. To me, this has been really fun, so I hope you'll enjoy it anyway. This is our agenda for today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. It is my goal to get to 100,000 subscribers on this channel within a year from now, by next summer of 2026. Help us get there. If you come here to draw from the astrological well and it's a part of your spiritual life, then we really appreciate it if you give us that thumbs up every day, give a comment in the comment section, and subscribe. You'll know when we're going live and you won't miss anything. Transcripts of any of these daily talks can be found on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Our fall enrollment program for the year 1 class in ancient Hellenistic astrology will begin in September. It's open now if you wanted to register. The early bird rate is there. But the 2 things I'm promoting today that we'll focus on for the month of August are August's webinar and our upcoming retreat. Our retreat is going to go on sale pretty shortly here, so I'm going to tell you about that. But go to the events page, click on live talks. I'm giving a talk this month on the 7th house. So if you want to come to a special webinar, Thursday night, August 14th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, you can come and hear me talk about the 7th house and the ancient meaning of the 7th house that relates it to things like the Kama Sutra and the house of love and sex. And it's also a place that's associated with death and the setting of the sun. Why are all of those things related? How can we read this house and understand more about marital or relational karma in our lives? So check that one out. If you can't attend live when you register, you get the link. You get the recording either way afterward whenever you attend any of our live webinars. The other thing that I want to point you to is our retreat. The retreat will be going on sale on August 11th. It is now, the retreat page is up on the website so that you can check it out. Go to events and you'll see the Oracle Within retreat listed right there. This is going to be taking place from June 6th to 13th of 2026 in Mexico at a retreat center called Mar de Jade. We're very excited for this. We're going to be doing an immersive training, hands-on experiential work with charts and astrology and live clients. But the framework of this is really to bolster and develop the theoretical foundations of all of our programs, which is this basic idea that astrology isn't a science. It's actually a form of divination. What does that mean? What does it mean on a philosophical level? What does it mean historically, theoretically, to say that we're doing divination? What is a divinatory approach to spirituality and reality itself? This is a part of all of our programs, but it's going to be really nice to really dig very deep into some of the esoteric roots of the astrology as divination perspective. This is something that was developed in my life through one of my primary role models, influences, Jeffrey Cornelius, who wrote a book on astrology as divination called The Moment of Astrology. If you've been around Nightlight or in any of my programs, you know this is a big part of how I approach astrology to see what we're doing as communication with an oracle. What does it mean for astrology to exist given some of the ancient mystic claims that time is nonlinear or that time is circular or cyclical? What does it mean if time is a kind of illusion? Then what is astrology exactly? If reality is acausal or even retrocausal, what does that mean astrology is? These are very exciting, really deep questions that can help us access the mystical roots of astrology. I have several teachers in my life to thank for giving me this perspective. One of my other teachers' name is Chris Odell, and he was certainly instrumental, along with Jeffrey as one of Jeffrey's students, in helping me understand this perspective and really incorporate it in my life over many years. So anyway, I'll be giving you an informational video next week about the retreat, so that if you want to learn more about this training program, it's about 30 hours worth of training over the course of a week, plus yoga and meditation every day. The beach is right there. We'll have some trips and community time together in person. This will be the first in-person rather than online training program I've created as well. And so information coming next week, as well as registration opening next week. And I hope to see some of you there. All right. On that note, let us now turn our attention over to the real-time clock, and let's take a look at this Mars-Saturn dynamic and kind of lay it out for you. So the Mars-Saturn dynamic is taking place on Friday. Today is Wednesday. So we're getting out ahead of this just a little bit. But what you can see here on Wednesday, August 6th, if you're listening to this video on the day it was published, is that Mars has just entered Libra today. We've sort of anticipated that at the beginning of the week. We talked about Mars and Libra. Yesterday, we talked through the grand air trine and talked about Mars and Libra again. Mars opposite Saturn, you can see applying almost instantly. Of course, it will oppose Neptune as well, taking place as it simultaneously enters into this kind of grand air trine configuration. Very powerful week for Mars. What I want to do today, and by the way, Saturday, there's a full moon in Aquarius right in the midst of all of this. We'll be unpacking that as the week goes on. We're also going to take some time with Mars opposite Neptune and try to build the delineation a little bit piece by piece. The beginning of the week, what I did was I said, what might this mean overall if you take the big picture of Mars going through all of this in a week? And I gave you a list of 5 things to watch for. So if you want kind of like, okay, rather than breaking it down into its parts, you want the big picture view, go back to Monday's video. Anyway, what I want to do today is just talk about Mars opposite Saturn in an archetypal vacuum. There are 4 areas of life that most people come to talk to astrologers about in every single reading. I have done, at this point, I had a really nice cataloged way of counting my readings up until 12 to 13,000. And then I've sort of lost track. I think I'm probably somewhere between 14 and 15,000 readings at this point. And so I can say with a lot of confidence, however many readings I've done, that people come to talk about the same stuff all the time. The same basic human concerns are constant throughout almost every astrological consultation that I've ever done. Some things are very unique, and you could never predict what some people will come to talk about, and you can never predict what kind of life experiences people have had, although it usually lands somewhere right in the middle in between really good events and really tough ones. But these 4 areas are consistent. Every reading features them, and they're rooted in the houses of astrology. The first house, internal psychological dynamics. People come to astrological readings to talk about internal experiences, the subjective, psychological, or even energetic level at which we experience or acknowledge the symbols of astrology. The other one is love and relationships. It's a very 7th house kind of way of looking at it. And people frequently come to readings wanting to know how any given aspect going on in their chart, or how any season in life that they're going through with the transits may pertain to love and relationships. It's a 7th house dynamic. People come to talk about career or work, obviously, and people come to talk about family dynamics, the karma that they're processing, the ancestral healing they're doing, the trauma they grew up with, whatever the case might be. These are the 4 areas of life that I have noticed people consistently wanting targeted analysis around. What do the transits mean for me right now, given that this is a focus? So I thought to myself, as I've been playing around with movies, and also I've got some other stuff I'm cooking up that I hope I'll be able to show you guys in the next month or so, other fun, creative angles I've been taking with content creation. I'm totally blaming Uranus and Gemini for this, like, let's have fun and be totally exploratory in the way that I'm doing content. Anyway, so I've got 5 things to watch for, but I've got 5 things to watch for that I'm going to tilt a little bit differently in terms of the way that they might show up in these 4 areas. So let's start with 5 things to watch for given the sphere of love and relationships. Let's just start there because I know a lot of people have wondered about that. Well, look, Mars opposite Saturn, the 2 malefics, have very constructive ways of appearing and very difficult ones. These are 2 malefic planets, and opposition tends to bring up polarization. You can think of Mars like the gas pedal and Saturn like the brake pedal. If you're trying to push them at the same time, that can be difficult. You can also think about Mars and Saturn dynamics as a kind of pressure cooker that brings certain kinds of tensions and pressures into focus. Whatever way you slice, these 5 things to watch for in these 4 areas will probably give a lot of people listening a more specific way of identifying the transit within whatever area of life is popping for you the most right now. So let's see how this goes. Okay, and I'm going to roll through these because we've got 20 of them to go through a little bit quicker than I might otherwise. But let's just see how it goes. So love and relationships, the number 1 thing, and I didn't create 20 individual banners. So for love and relationships, when Mars and Saturn shows up, you might notice control struggles where 2 people have to deal with who has power, who has leadership, who has control, who's the one making decisions, who's the person feeling restrained or restricted by the other person, who's struggling to break free from that restriction. Anything involving who has power, authority, structure, who's potentially dominating the other person. So control struggles, let's call it. The second one, which is really interesting, would be that there may be blocks around physical intimacy where Saturn opposite or Mars opposite Saturn can represent almost like a restriction around intimacy or closeness, like more like I'm holding you at arm's length, or that I can't be intimate with you because I'm focused on something else, or something else is requiring my time and energy, and so I have to shut out other people or other things. And there may be also just generally issues around trust. Mars opposite Saturn says, I'd rather be on my own, or I don't trust you, or I'm holding you at arm's length, or there's some kind of block or delay or restriction around intimacy. That's another way that Mars and Saturn can show up in relationships. Then another one that's closely related would be, I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be in my fortress of solitude. I'm going to put up my barriers and defenses. I'm going to be, either avoidant. This would be a signature, for example, in the attachment theory for like avoidancy issues. But also maybe there's setting boundaries because closeness in the past has led to betrayal or hurt, and now boundaries need to be established. But either way, either issues around vulnerability and boundaries, either that could be coming from fear, and that may need to be addressed, or coming from, look, I've learned and I have to set boundaries to be safe. Another one would be Mars opposite Saturn likes things that are really difficult, likes things that are heavy, and likes things that require effort. And so I have noticed over the years that Mars-Saturn dynamics in people's charts, when they're configured to the house of love, relationships, Venus is involved somehow, may give a person that sense that this love is worth the effort, the patience. It's someone I've fallen in love with. It's from another country, and it's going to be 2 years of long distance correspondence before we can be together, but it's worth the effort. So long, hard, difficult, persistent efforts required for love. That's a Mars-Saturn dynamic. Also, attraction to things that are impossible or difficult that maybe aren't good for you in love. For example, I'm going to wait until this married person is out of their relationship, but they're dragging their feet. They're taking forever. They tell me it'll happen, but I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And, so be careful, thoughtful, careful about difficult, persistent, disciplined things showing up around love. Is it really worth it? Isn't it? And then finally, I would say that this opposition can signify moments of greater maturity or growing up or becoming more of an adult or like veteran, so to speak, in love. You've withstood and some tests and trials and tribulations, and there's staying power that's developing. an ability to stick through something, stick with something. All right, so those are love and relationships. How about internal and psychological? When we experience this within ourselves as a self relating to self kind of thing, or the inner experiences energetically or psychologically, sometimes Mars Saturn will show up when we're feeling like our ambitions or desires are being personally frustrated. You can't do something. You're not allowed to do something. You're not good enough to do something. Another one that can come up will be self-shaming, self-harming, self-criticism, where those voices of judgment, the super ego, so to speak, will say you're not good enough. You know, you're never going to be something. So watch for limiting, constraining, or oppressive voices within ourselves. On the other hand, like as someone who experiences I like running up against edges in the gym and working out. So when you forge success, when you build muscle, when you build endurance, when you build and develop a craft or mastery over something, and it has to happen through sustained, persistent efforts, working through limits and hardships, that kind of mastery is born in the fire. That's a Mars-Saturn dynamic. The other one would be perfectionism, especially with Mars in Libra. The opposition to Saturn can be about either really harshly judging mistakes or demanding that a performance be mistake-free. That can be maybe a good thing, maybe not such a good thing. You think of an Olympic performance that is aiming at gold medal, that Mars-Saturn can be the flawlessness needed to achieve such a thing. You think about that same flawlessness applied to body image, you're in trouble. So it's, again, a double-edged sword. I think the other thing here is engagement versus detachment. Mars wants to engage, often through desire and ambition. Saturn sometimes more retreating into solitude, detaching, kind of an otherworldly planet that can encourage us like the hermit to climb up the mountain and sort of see the world from a distance. Are we feeling that tension between engagement and disengagement? Those are internal psychological dynamics. Let's go on to career or work. See, isn't this fun? It's fun. It's like, I was like, oh, you know what? I always have a list of 5 things to watch for. What if I spun those into 4 different angular house topic areas? Because that's easy for me to do, but this would also make it a really, really diverse play on the 5 things to watch for, I think. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'm just excited. So let's see, career or work. If you're in the workplace, confrontation with authority figures would be very common for Mars opposite Saturn, or anything about an organizational environment or structure or protocol within the workplace that feels oppressive or rigid that you're kind of running up against. Another one would be very similar to like things like building things in the fire, career achievements that come through long, hard, sustained work, mastery, development, moving up, pay scale or promotions or what have you. Anything that is about that slow arc of development and progress forged through discipline, working through hardships, biding your time, dealing with periods where you feel ineffective or unseen, but you keep churning away. And then maybe things come as a result. On the other hand, anything that feels like completely futile or exhausting professionally can show up. This is just not worth it. The other thing is the pressure cooker dynamic. I'll never forget my colleague Jen Zart described Mars Saturn as a pressure cooker. They'd be very good for working under constraints or deadlines, like getting something done at the last minute that requires kind of a heroic effort with constraints and pressure and timelines. So that can show up in work. I think anything with respect to conflicts among colleagues, like remember we were talking about power struggles in relationships. So the same thing can happen with coworkers, where there's control issues, maybe among people that you work with. And then I would say also that Mars Saturn, specifically in the workplace, is very like my self-worth is wrapped up in either how good I become, how recognized I become, or how masterful I am at something. And that pressure may be a positive or a negative thing that appears in the workplace this week, driving you forward to greater things, maybe burdening you with unrealistic expectations. So watch for that. And then finally, family dynamics, the 4th house topics, right? Are you dealing with either within yourself as a parent or in your history of being a kid of parents who were authoritarian or overly strict? Are you dealing with that karma somehow? There can also be families that don't allow for anger or emotion, restriction. You restrict the will, you restrict desire, you restrict passion. Well, some people are very passionate emotionally, and if you can imagine growing up in an environment where you're not allowed to simply express, or you're not allowed to be angry, or you're not allowed to be just even charismatic, that could be a Mars Saturn dynamic that we're exploring somehow in adulthood, or even reflecting on as parents. Do we allow our kids enough space to have big feelings? That's something else to think about. The other thing is that Mars Saturn will frequently show up in homes as the sense of discipline or duty, the parent's discipline or duty to provide, to pay bills, to raise, to parent, to guide, or sometimes the feeling of those responsibilities being completely neglected or abandoned, and therefore you have to do it on your own. Or when parents get older, sometimes we have to take care of them later in life. But that sense of being duty bound, or having to go it alone, or the burden and weight of responsibility relative to things like home and family. And then I would also say that to whatever extent there is literal violence or suppression, and a feeling of not being safe and having to wall off within homes or families, could be very Mars Saturn. What do you guys think? Did you like this? I think that was really fun. I am going to do this again because I like it. So I don't care if you do. No, I'm just kidding. I'm half kidding. So I really enjoyed that because it's fun for me to kind of expand on things that I like doing, but find new ways of doing them as well. So anyway, I hope that this was enjoyable. What we're going to do tomorrow is play this game again, but we're going to see, it's very Gemini play. We're going to play this game. We're going to play this game again, but we're going to do it for Mars opposite Neptune, the full moon in Aquarius by the end of the week. Okie dokie. That's it for today. I hope you're having a good one. We'll see you again soon. Bye.